Hey everyone! In this video we will look at 14 very common Chinese radicals that were inspired by nature. Hopefully they will help you in your Chinese learning journey. Let's get started. The first radical is which is also a character on its own and means sun. So lots of characters that contain also relate to the sun. For example, Ming, which means bright, Nuang, which means warm, as in 暖和, or Shai, which means to sun dry or to bask in the sun, often called 晒太阳. Can also carry a secondary meaning, which is day, which is of course connected to the sun. For example, 时, as in 时间, means time. 晨, as in 早晨, means dawn, and 晚 means late or evening. As you can see, the meaningful radical in this case, is usually positioned at the left or at the top of the character. The right part of the character is usually just responsible for how the character is pronounced. 火 is also a standalone character and means fire. It's used in 灯, which means lamp, because oil lamps, for example, used to have actual fire inside them. It's also in both characters of 爆炸, which means to explode, or in 熄灭, which means to extinguish a fire. One of the main uses of fire is to cook food, so lots of cooking terms also contain this radical. For example, 炒, which means to stir fry, 烧烤, which is a barbecue, or 炖, which means to stew or to cook slowly in a closed pan. Thirdly, 火 also appears in many terms relating to heat. For example, 燥, as in 干燥, which means dry, 熔, which means to melt, or 烫, which means to iron, for example, clothes, where the iron used to be heated up using actual fire. Unlike the previous two, this one is a proper radical and cannot occur on its own. It's usually called 四点底, and even though it looks like it could mean water, it actually means fire. So the meanings carried are very similar to the last radical. It can stand for heat, for example in 热, which means warm, 照, which means to shine, or 焦, which means burnt. It too appears in terms related to cooking, like 煮, which means to boil, 熟, which means something is cooked through or ripe, or 烹, as in 烹饪, which is the formal term for cooking. As a third meaning, the four dots can also relate to emotions or feelings. For example, 热烈, which means warm, as in 热烈欢迎, which means warm welcome, or in 煎熬, which means to suffer or to live in hardship. 土 means earth and can also occur on its own. It can carry the meaning of location, for example in 地, which means ground, 场, as in 广场, which means place or public square, or also in 址, as in 地址or 住址, which both mean address. Words that have to do with soil also often contain 土, like 埋, which means to bury, 堆, which is a pile, or 培, as in 培养, which means to cultivate. The things that are built on top of the ground also regularly use this radical. For example, in 城, as in 城市, which means city, 墙壁, which is a wall, or 坟墓, which is a grave. Our next radical, mu, is very common and means tree or wood. When used as a radical, it is often on the left side and referred to as 木字旁. Both characters in the Chinese word for tree branch, 树枝, have 木字旁. Seng Ling is a famous example of how some Chinese words just explain themselves. A forest is just a whole bunch of trees, each one represented by mu. It's also in guo, meaning fruit. For example, apple is 苹果. Lots of specific families of plants or trees also include mu. For example, 松树 is a pine tree, and li and mei refer to pears and plums respectively. But mu does not only occur in things found in nature, but also in what humans made with it. For example, in objects made out of wood. For example, in 桌子 or 椅子, which mean table or chair, or in 桥, which means bridge. The next radical looks very similar and means grain. When used as radical, it is often called 禾木旁. It is found in farming-related terms, such as 种. This character has two different meanings depending on the tone. With a fourth tone, it means to plant, as in 种菜, which means to plant vegetables. With a third tone, 种, it refers to different types or variants of something. It's also in 香, which means fragrant, 秋, which means autumn, and in 稻穗, which is the so-called rice ear. That's the top part of a rice plant which contains the actual rice seeds. Farmers used to also pay rent and taxes using the grain they produced, which explains why terms like 租 and 税 also contain 禾木旁, as does 利, as in 利益, which means profit or benefit. The grass radical 草字头 also cannot occur on its own and is always on top of the character. It's extremely common in all sorts of plants. For example, 草 is grass, 花 is flower, 茶 is tea, 蔬菜 are vegetables, 葡萄 are grapes, and 茄子 means eggplant. As a hidden second meaning, it can also signify beauty or elegance. For example, 英 as in 英雄, which means hero, 荣 as in 光荣, meaning glory, or 艺 as in 艺术, which means art. As I said in my transcription video, it's also frequently used when translating female first names, probably also with this meaning. Qi as a character refers to air, gas, or the vital energy qi. When used as a radical, it mostly signifies gas. With the water radical, which we will get to shortly, it becomes qi, meaning steam, as in 汽车, meaning car, because early cars used to run on steam. By far the most common place to find the qi radical, however, is on the periodic table of elements, where every single gas uses this radical. What's under the radical is just the phonetic component, mostly approximating the first syllable of the English name of the element, with a few exceptions. You see 5 examples of them here. If you want to know more about the characters on the Chinese periodic table, there's a cool video I've linked below. The Chinese character for mountain is shang. Unsurprisingly, characters that use it as a radical also have to do with mountains. For example, Shangfeng is the mountain's peak. Shangling is a mountain ridge. Yang as in Yangshi is a rock. Xia as in Xiagu is a gorge or a canyon. Ya is a cliff, and Dao is an island, which I guess some islands are the peak of a mountain that is underwater. Our next radical is shi, often used in 石头, which means stone or rock. Words that are semantically related include yin, which means hard, po, which means break or broken, and sui, meaning shatter. Shi is also used in objects made out of stone, like wang, which is a bowl, zhuang is a brick, and bei is a stone tablet. And thirdly, this radical can also refer to minerals. Kuang, which is an ore or a mine. Tang means carbon, and liu huang means sulfur. The latter two are also elements on the periodic table. They are solid nonmetals. After the gases and the solids, we now get to the liquids. Shui is a character meaning water, and also carries this meaning when used as a radical. Bing means ice. Cheng is a spring of water. Gong means mercury, one of only two elements that is liquid at room temperature. Beng is a pump, usually for water, and niao means urine. The actual water radical, on the other hand, is far more commonly used and is represented by these three dots, sangdiang shui. It occurs in bodies of water like he for river, hu for lake, and hai for ocean. It also occurs in actions related to water like xi for washing, liu for flowing, youyong for swimming, piao for floating, di for dripping, and jiao for watering, as in jiao shui. But that's not all. It's also used in properties that water can have, like qing for clear water, sheng for deep water, or shi for wet water. It's also used in all manner of fluids. You is oil, tang is soup, zhi is juice, jiu is alcohol, hang is sweat, and ye, as in ye tea, just means liquid. Closely related to the previous one is this radical called liangdiang shui. It also refers to water, but in a frozen state, or just to coldness in general. Leng means cold. Liang, as in liang kuai, means cool. Dung, as in dongjie, means to freeze. Bingling is one of the ways to refer to an icicle, and Linglie means extremely cold. And lastly, we have the character for rain, yu. As a radical, it refers to different kinds of precipitation or just weather in general. Xue, as in xia xue, is to snow. Lei, as in da lei, is to thunder. Zheng means to shake or quake. Bao, as in bing bao, means hail. Lu is dew, the tiny water drops you find on plants in the morning. And its frozen equivalent, frost, is called shuang. That's it for this video. I hope you learned something new. Thanks for watching.